Don Peoples, Deadbolt. Let's talk about it. So we got to get into, man, what is going on around the NFL and what's happening with Brian Flores and Hugh Jackson making separate allegations against the NFL and how they run their ship and their policies and their procedures. First, we're going to get into obviously what happened with Brian Flores. Obviously, dropping a bombshell on the NFL, saying that their Rooney rule to obviously interview African American candidates, like each team who has a coaching opening has to interview an African American candidate. So with this rule being in place, everything's supposed to be fair down the line. They're supposed to have an equal opportunity to be able to, receive employment just like everybody else. But what ended up happening, and I don't know if this was done intentionally, because we know how Bill Belichick is. He texts Brian Flores and was congratulating him on the Giants' job. Once he did that and initiated the text, Brian hitting him back like, yo, do you know something I don't know? Giants, I ain't even interviewed with them yet. And come to find out, Bill Belichick was talking about Brian Gable, who the Giants decided to hire as their head coach. And he is of Caucasian descent. So with Bill Belichick sending this text message to Brian Flores a whole day before he was even scheduled to interview, basically congratulating him on the job and making a mistake, thinking it was the wrong Brian, I highly doubt that, because it's Bill Belichick. Like, this is the godfather of the NFL coaches. How doesn't he know Brian Gable from Brian Flores unless he had both of them in the phone and just didn't know exactly which one he was hitting up. You know what I'm saying? Like, he might have got confused. That could be a true possibility. I mean, Bill is a little older now. But, I think with Brian Flores coming at the NFL about this and obviously exposing the text thread between him and Bill Belichick, basically saying like a lot of these owners already have their coaches selected and their coaches look just like them. The people that they're putting in power majority of the time to make these decisions look like them. And he's exposing that a lot of these coaching decisions are already predetermined and they're just going to bring in their black candidate to try to give him an interview when really they have no, you know what I'm saying, they're not even trying to keep him for real and or hire him. But, let's just keep it a bean though. I don't feel like this should be in place because I feel like it forces a racist owner to have to do something he's not comfortable with of doing. We all know that the NFL is controlled by people of Caucasian descent. But us as black folks and colored folks, we not going to stop watching it. So I don't think that having that rule just to appease the people is the right thing to do. If you're going to hire a black coach, then you need to hire a black coach, not because of a rule, but because he's the most qualified candidate. So this is why the black coach needs to be hired. But when you're talking about, black coaches, the only one who really had tender, in the game is Mike Tomlin. But shout out to the Cincinnati Bengals because they had Marvin Lewis for over 10 plus years. You know what I'm saying? And now you got Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh. These are not the most pro-black cities, if you get what I'm saying. So, it really just depends on what team and what owner, you know what I'm saying? But I don't think it should be a rule in place to force them to do something that they don't want to do. If they don't want to hire him, they shouldn't have to. It's not, I look at it like the NFL is only controlled by 32 teams. It's 32. So you got all owners who are of white descent, of course they're going to want to put their people in place. But do we need more diversified, you know, in the upper offices as far as like the ownerships and stuff like that? Absolutely. But then also, while they're dealing with this Brian Flores situation, you had Hugh Jackson come out and say that while in Cleveland, you know, he went 1-31. Shout out to the Cleveland Browns. It's my home city team. But he went 1-31, and, you know, he got to cover himself, man. I mean, Hugh Jackson was one of the most sought after coaches when Cleveland got him. And they drug him through the mud. He went 1-31, had a winless season, and they booted him out the door. So obviously he's trying to cover himself, but he's saying that he was paid upwards of $170,000 per game to tank as an incentive. Now, we all know from every sport, from especially basketball and football, that, you know, tanking to get the best pick is something that we all know as fans happen. But to hear you come out the box and say that from behind the scenes is definitely crazy. And I think we need to take note of that because, you know, he was put in a situation not to win and not to succeed by doing something that obviously is okay within the NFL, because obviously the Haslams are new owners. So they ain't hip to like the old school ways. This is something that was passed down. And whenever it's time to tank, this is what you should do. Incentivize coaches. So with him coming out against the NFL and the ownership with that, it's just opening up a whole can of worms. And is the NFL finally being exposed for what it is? I mean, you had, you know, Will Smith in the concussion that exposed all the mental trauma, basically, and mental health issues surrounding the most violent sport in the world. And, you know, it took a lot of flack from that. The Shield took a lot of flack. You know, they've been trying to clean it a little bit up, but still, you can't clean up the most violent game. Yeah, you can try, but it's not going to happen because people will no longer watch. They watch for the violence. So dealing with this whole concussion situation and dealing with that whole situation and, you know, players, you know, not having guaranteed contracts and having to play, you know what I'm saying, when hurt and knowing that they might mess up themselves physically. You know, I think that movie really exposed the NFL then. And then you had the Colin Kaepernick situation that immediately took place after. And, you know, this exposed, you know, I know racism all around the, you know, America at the time, and that's what he was protesting against. But the NFL lashed out, and the owners never let this man back in the league, basically showing their hand again that, yes, we stand behind everything that America stands behind. And at the time, obviously, and still, there's not equality. Is there opportunity to advance, be successful? Yes, but the opportunities are far in between. And the amount of people falling off a cliff and going into the prison systems and all these other systems that they have set in place is far outweighing the successful people that we're producing out of our communities. So when Colin is standing for that, the NFL owners shunned him. And not only did they do that, they didn't let the man back in the league. So they showed you their hand once again. So why are we acting like this is something new? With, you know, like with this whole situation that's going on with Brian and you, like why do we act like this is something shocking or unexpected? This is the NFL. And the NFL is the biggest brand in sports. So they know that they can withstand these PR hits. You know, oh, you don't like us for this? Fine. You don't like us for that? Fine. But people are still going to continue to watch. If the NFL came out and said, yo, we're going to suspend the season, you know, we're going to suspend the season for the next 2 years due to our, you know, sales, and we're going to reevaluate our brand, and we're going to come out bigger and better, but we're going to suspend the season. Man, people would line up and protest in droves and beg for the NFL to come back. So we have to understand where we're at as a people, man. We are sports junkies. We are NFL fanatics. And the Shield knows this. So with them knowing that they can control us through our sports teams and how we're so in love with football, they know that this is going to come and it's going to blow over. It's just a little media hype to go with the Super Bowl. You know, we got the Super Bowl this coming up week. You know what I'm saying? And, you know, all the festivities, you know, you got a dead weekend coming up, so it ain't going to be no sports. So we got to have something to talk about. So the NFL is definitely going to be able to withstand this. All the minorities that support the NFL, it's over 70% of minorities playing in the NFL. They're not going to come together and strike and demand equal opportunity for coaches and staff and stuff like that. That's just not going to happen. So I really think that we're making a big deal out of something that we're not going to really address. You know, I think Brian Flores, you know, probably will get a wrongful suit because of the text thread, you know, between him and Bill Belichick, but that's not going to change anything. They're just going to be a little bit slicker hiring their coaches. Maybe you might see a couple more black coaches in the league next year. But I feel out of all 32 teams it is or whatever, like it at least should be over 20 black head coaches with the amount of African American players that you have in the league and players of color. So, you know, this is something that I think, man, with that and also paying the tank. You know what I mean? I think that, you know, the NFL needs to try to clear up. And I think they have been exposed for a lot of different things. And this just adds the cherries on the top. But us as consumers will not stop watching the brand. And I think that they know that and they play on that. But I want y'all to get in the comment box and let me know what y'all think. Do y'all feel like the NFL has finally been exposed for their corruption, their mishandlement of players, not giving them guaranteed contracts, and pretty much people leaving the NFL broke with mental problems? Have they been exposed for all this? Have they been exposed for not hiring enough minority coaches? You know, have they been exposed for paying to tank to get number one picks? I really want to hear y'all take on this, man. Y'all like, subscribe, share. Y'all hit the notification tab every time I drop a video so y'all can tap in. It's your boy Don Peoples. Deadbolt. Gone.